Last but not least, Logan, today's featured presentation, because it will be the featured presentation from, well, hopefully for the next 10 years. How'd Jayden Daniels do? So yesterday was an interesting day for the quarterbacks. There just wasn't a lot of splashy anything. Obviously, the most exciting drill of the day was the situational drill, in which I thought Daniels performed pretty well, decision-making wise. Obviously, execution-wise, they needed a touchdown. They didn't get one. So if you haven't heard about this yet, they put 28 seconds, I believe it was, on the clock. You're down 20-14, so you need a touchdown. You got no timeouts. Ball's on the 20-yard line going in. So Daniels and Mariota both ran this. Daniels and the twos went first. Jayden hit. I thought it was an interesting play call. They go screen on first down. But okay, that's what they do. That forces them to quickly get up to the line, spike it. Third down, third down, actually, I think was the most interesting down. Fourth down, ultimately, spoiler alert, third down, they don't score, but we'll come back to it. Fourth down, it's cover zero. He throws a one-on-one, like, jump ball in the end zone. Receiver falls down. Nick Whiteside actually drops the pick, much to the consternation of his teammates, although his coaches were like, hey, dude, nice job. We won the game. But on third down, Logan, he throws the ball through the uprights because he just realizes, like, I got nothing here and I can't waste time. And there was 6 seconds on the clock. Meanwhile, when Marcus Mariota and the ones run it, he gets to a similar third down situation. He hits Austin Eckler out. It's not really in the flat. It's beyond the line of scrimmage. It's on the sideline. And Eckler doesn't get out of bounds. It was on the far sideline, so I couldn't tell whether that was Eckler did a bad job of getting out of bounds or whether Mariota made a bad decision and hung him out to dry. And ultimately, they don't even get a fourth down off. So I think for, who was better in the drill, again, it's one rep of one drill, but you see the intelligence and the football IQ and the feel from Jayden Daniels, and for Mariota, you're like, hey man, you're a vet. We should do better. But I really would like to focus on Daniels and what you saw from him there, and how significant that kind of awareness is already in his young career.
Yeah, I mean, he just does stuff like that every single time we're out there to watch, which I think is great. It's one of those things where it just, you can tell he's repped. He's played a lot of football. He understands. And this is something that you saw, with Dwayne Haskins, obviously rest in peace. But when he'd play, like it was, it's 4th and 10, it's 4th and goal from the 20. There's 10 seconds left. Like, you need to throw this ball in the end zone, and he's throwing the ball away. Right? It just showed a football kind of. Robert Griffin would do the same thing, like a lack of just football awareness. Right? So even the interception, I like. You know what I'm saying? Like even that is like a good sign to me, because it's like,
right,
we're not worried about our stat line. It's like this ball, we're getting 0. It has to be in the end zone. We have to have a shot. So let's throw it up and give him a shot. And if it's picked off or incomplete, that's ball game anyway. It doesn't matter. So I like that he's got like this kind of just awareness, and he does it in seemingly all the drills. He seems to be very locked in on all that stuff. And that was his MO coming out of college. And couple that with kind of his cool, calm demeanor, like it never seems like rattled. He's never freaking out. Couple that with the quick release, like, we talk about that drill specifically, but I actually thought the rest of his practice was pretty good. We'll talk about that more in a second. But even though it's a pick and even though it's an incompletion, like you understand what is happening in the game. And I can't tell you how many times and how many quarterbacks I played with where they just don't get it. And you can just tell that's at the forefront of his mind. Okay, boom. This is what we're doing. This is what needs to happen here. Because 28 seconds with no timeouts is a tough time. You have to be very efficient. And I thought he did a great job of that. Yeah, brutal drill.
And they did a good job to at least give themselves a chance. And by the way, did it with a first down screen call, which I guess you're hoping that either your receiver gets out of bounds or scores. If not, man, that's one where if it happens in the fall, we're like, hey, I don't know that throwing something where you're going to have to unpile dudes with 28 seconds left is ideal, but it's the kind of thing you try in the spring, I think, to see what happens.
Well, I think it shows you, they probably discussed this in the meeting. Dan, when I was in Atlanta, would do this almost weekly. They'd have a situation, that was the point of emphasis, even in the offseason and in season, was like, hey, we got 28 seconds left. We've run our analytics. We've had our analytics guy. This is the sheet. You actually can run 2 inbound plays. But once you've run those 2 plays, you can no longer run them. It doesn't matter when they come. So it's basically like you can run a play, you can spike it. You should have 16 seconds remaining. You can still run your 3 remaining plays. I think that's probably how the math works out there. Interesting in this drill, though, I thought this was interesting. So they run the screen, the receiver's kind of running back to the huddle, and Big Phil is running over there and punches the ball out. And so I love that Big Phil is running the ball, but it kind of ruins the integrity of the drill because instead of getting the ball back and setting it down and sniping it and doing and working that mechanic, it becomes we have to go scramble to get the football. It probably would have been a delay of game if it was a real game, but it gets them from 28 seconds to 11 seconds. So basically they had to now run 3 plays in 11 seconds, which I think is kind of to your point, like great job. They even got 3 plays executed, right? Because it's like they had to get the spike. The spike was the next play, right? So that's 2 plays in 11 seconds, which is very doable, but it was like even more challenging than when Marcus Mariota went because of how the sequence went. So I don't know. I just think it's that drill. So let me get back to my original thought. That drill, I think, again, illustrates you can execute a play with 28 seconds left and get a spike and still have 2 plays to go. So if you want something that's conservative like a screen, that would work. But I love that there's an awareness of what's happening. And also, I think the fact that it seemed that the defense was working zero, I like screens versus zero. Like I like the call. So it's because like you get one-on-one matchups in terms of blocking, you get your tackle out there in space. So you might hit, and that's what you want. But obviously didn't go the way they thought. So
yeah, no, it's definitely there's a risk element. Anytime you're gonna have a big pile with the clock running late, there's a risk element. Now in training camp, you are getting a look and whatever. There's not going to be a big pile because you're not going to the ground, but you do have potentially a big defensive lineman who's goobering up the drill. Marcus, as mentioned, it's hard to really do any extra analysis on the Eckler thing unless you saw it way better than I did.
It was on the far side. I was standing with you. It was on the far.
Yeah, it was so far. Logan, when we stand next to each other, we don't see the same things.
We don't
see
the
nature.
Same thing.
That's the nature of your level of expertise. I certainly see a lot for an average person. I've been covering the league for a while, but I do not have the experience that you have standing on a sideline watching football.
In the moment, I thought he should have thrown it away. That was my gut reaction to it. I was like, don't do that. Throw that away. Like, because
it's not worth the 7 yards or whatever they got.
And I think it was like less than that. I think it was 4 yards, because like you're saying, if you get tackled in bounds, the game's over. So it's the 4 yards aren't worth that extra shot at the end zone. But again, that's why you're running the drill. It's like now you can go. Cliff can be like Dan, whoever. Brian Johnson can be like, guys, more important, is it this 3 yards unless you're sure this guy can get out of bounds, or is it the next play? And the answer is obviously the next play. So
how do you think Daniels did otherwise? One thing that stood out to me was I felt like the biggest plays yesterday came over the middle of the field, which is something that I think is encouraging. I hit Ertz on a big one. He had Tinsley on a nice, I don't know what you'd call that route, the one where he undressed the coverage with the cadence beforehand, and then Tinsley just sits down. It's not really a curl because he kind of just finds the dead spot. It's almost like he cuts off a dig.
Yeah, I thought it was like a dig, yeah.
Yeah. But he sits down in the soft spot of the zone, and that Jayden
nice play by Tinsley. That was a good play by Tinsley.
Undressed with the cadence beforehand, but definitely some big plays. No like big monster 60-yard touchdown type of stuff. And I think it's interesting that he hasn't taken off and run yet, which I just want to see because I want to see him run. I want to see him run in person full speed, but that's selfish. But what'd you make of Daniels' practice to wrap up the pod here?
Yeah, I think my highlight of the day was the coverage, right? Was the coverage with the cadence. Like they're kind of up. It looks like it's going to be some type of man. They're kind of playing in this flat contour. He gives them a hard count. The safeties very subtly start backing up. And it's like, oh, well, they're in quarters. And so I love that he was able to do that. I love that the response is like, hey, on this dig, we got to kind of it was quarters or cover 2, midfield open, just because we don't know the coverages and we don't have film. But then I know I have to manipulate the hook player. I look the hook player off. I throw the curl to Tinsley. Like that is quarterback play. That's like quarterback play at its finest. So when you see a play like that, you're like, awesome. And then, but in the same breath, it was like, we had one where I think they were rolling from single high to cover 2. It gets him for a second. He has to double clutch. He completes the ball, but he still gets got. He's still a rookie. But I love the the throwaway in the low red with 28 seconds left. I love the dig throw to Tinsley. I love the throw to Zach Ertz, kind of where he's working that corner out with the 2 guys releasing. Ball placement was excellent. Like he just every day. Obviously, there's something he can work on. Every day you come out being like, oh, that could have been a little bit better, but. And again, you don't want to make declarative statements after 3 OTA practices, but you see some of the things that you saw in college and you say, man, and some of the things are better here than they were in college, which are very encouraging. And I think to myself, like, if this offense has a quarterback rushing attack where they're willing to do it 4 to 5 times a game, like they are going to be very, very hard to stop because of his ability as a thrower, because of his understanding of coverage. And again, every day, like your old adage, the test that's given to him, he seems to be doing a good job. I do think there's a little bit more friction. Like the first couple of days, he was just out there dealing, looked like college. But as the defense has improved, as the defense starts to understand concepts, it's looking a little bit more NFL-ish. So I think it's going to be a little bit more challenging for him, but I think he's matching the pace, and we talked about, I think the last OTA looked like he had a rough day. There's still a lot of good things that come out of that where you're like, man, that's a really high level throw by him. So a lot of positive stuff.
I lied. I have one more thing I want to talk about real quick. Joe Witt Jr. said something after practice yesterday that I was so happy he said, because it meant my initial feel coming out of practice was correct. And Logan, all I really care about is being right. My big takeaway from practice yesterday was that the defensive back combinations are incredibly plentiful, and that this is going to be a feature of this defense, which is unsurprising based off what Witt and Quinn have done previously. But damn, there's a lot of dudes out there playing. And you got Sainer still is out there. Dominique Hampton is out there in certain packages, with the ones. And Joe Witt basically afterwards was admonishing the media for daring to ask about who's the potential starters are. He's like, don't ask me. We have 17, 18 guys that are going to be considered starters. And I'm surprised it's that many, because I haven't seen quite that many before.
I think he's being hyperbolic. He's being hyperbolic, for sure.
Anthony and I were started to count dudes off yesterday on the show, and it's not ridiculous. If you figure let's say there's 3 edges, and then Payne, Allen, and Newton, that's 16 linemen. 3 linebackers. There's 9.
So I'd say that they probably, again, this is roster control, but I think they probably, knowing what they did in Dallas, I think they probably keep closer to 10 defensive linemen. It's at least
I'm just saying that guys that are going to play 50% plus snaps.
I see what you're saying.
In rotation, that are genuinely a big part of the game on a regular basis, that you say, our A team is out there, even if John Allen's on the sideline. If it's Newton and Payne, and Newton's what we think he can be, that's still a starting caliber D-line unit versus oh no, the subs are in. So if you have that 3-4 linebackers, then you've got all these different DBs, especially the 4 or 5 safeties that are playing. I mean, there's a package where Percy Butler's running with the ones. There's a package where Dominique Hampton's running with the ones. Obviously, Chin and Quan Martin. Derek Forrest, you're where does he even fit in? I don't know. He's out there running around, getting in the way, doing his thing. But where's default on any given snap? There genuinely is 17, 18 guys that depend if it's dime this or nickel that or buffalo nickel this. The first primary version, the number one depth chart version of that is going to involve that many players. And I think it's fascinating, and also speaks to how quickly they've been able to assemble a variety of pieces that fit those needs for them.
Yeah, and I think you have to go as far as watching Dallas film. That's what they do. And Dan's thrown this term around, the positionless football thing, getting guys that, because again, linebackers are liabilities in coverage. So what you do is you get Frankie Louvu, who's a great pass rusher, great blitzer. You can use him in that way, but you want the other spots there to be filled out. If you're in dime, you need a lot of DBs, right? So you're talking about Dominique Hampton, you're talking about Mike Sainer still at nickel, you're talking about Quan at safety, Jeremy Chin. And Jeremy Chin in base, it basically was like Cam Curl last year in some of these practices where he's the nickel player, but it's actually a linebacker because the offense is in what I would call base offense. They've got 2 tight ends or a tight end and a blocking kind of element, a second blocking element there. So I think, yes, that is ultimately, I think Dan and Joe Witt's vision for this group is they want guys that can do a bunch of different stuff, and you want coverage players that can be physical and physical players that can cover. We did a breakdown today, and Dan was like, he went through the order of priority when it comes to secondary players. It's all coverage stuff and I think it's smart because that's what the NFL is doing. They're trying to throw the ball over the yard. So you've assembled all these coverage players that are kind of tweeners, which is great because they can still play in the box. But I do think that that's the direction they want this defense to go, and it's great because it makes it really hard for offenses to identify, who the rushers are, who the known rushers are, and what kind of coverages you're in.
Yeah, no doubt about it. All right. That's our show today. We'll talk a lot more about that after everything next week. I do believe, Logan, I know you're traveling a little bit next week, but John Keim is committed to join me. So
yes,
Keim and I are going to do a little home and home where John's going to come here on Take Command with me while Logan's out of town. And then I will also be on the John Keim report. So free plug for Keim, as if he needs it. Go subscribe to Keim's pod. You'll hear me, you hear Logan there quite a bit as well. And we're thrilled to have John over here with us. And we'll see what else we can populate for you next week. Make sure you subscribe to find out. And we'll see you next week on Take Command. Thanks for watching this clip of Take Command, which has a brand new home.
That's right. You can watch on YouTube at the Team 980.
You can also listen to full episodes in the free Odyssey app, which is now enabled with Apple CarPlay. So we'll just, follow you around.